Welcome to Beyond the Lens, where history comes alive, and every documentary takes you deeper than ever before. History isn't just written in books. It's carved into ancient ruins, hidden beneath the oceans. For breathtaking this is a journey beyond the lens.
Every year, before the sun even comes up, millions of teenagers across India are already awake, staring at textbooks. They live in a quiet, isolated world of mock exams and endless revision, all preparing for a single piece of paper. But step outside those quiet study rooms today, and that solitary focus ruptures into loud public street demonstrations and deep anger over the examination process. Medicine is one of India's most deeply respected professions. For families, securing a spot in a medical college means the payoff of years of financial sacrifice and generational hope. All of that ambition is now locked behind one singular choke point, the National Eligibility Cum Entrance Test, or NEET. Placing the entire weight of the country's medical dreams onto a single exam has turned personal ambition into a national flashpoint. To understand why NEET exists at all, we have to look at the system it replaced. Before 2013, medical admissions in India operated under a disorganized web of overlapping standards. If you wanted to maximize your chances of getting a seat, you had to travel. Students zigzagged across the country, sitting for dozens of separate entrance exams run by individual states, central universities, and private colleges. Families burned through their savings, paying for multiple application fees, train tickets, and hotel rooms. The logistical exhaustion alone was often enough to derail highly capable students. Without a unified standard, it was nearly impossible to compare candidates fairly. The system heavily favored those with the resources to travel and pay multiple fees, leaving the process inefficient and unequal. This systemic exhaustion and inequality created the opening for a total structural pivot towards centralized reform. The government proposed a seemingly elegant solution: scrap the dozens of conflicting tests and replace them with one standardized national entrance exam. The transition faced years of legal pushback. State governments and private institutions fought the move in the courts, arguing that a centralized test threatened regional autonomy and ignored local language rights. Despite the resistance, judicial rulings and administrative mandates eventually forced the measure through. NEET was cemented as the undisputed gateway to an undergraduate medical degree. On paper, this solved the inequality problem. A unified test meant every student, regardless of where they lived, would be judged by the exact same strict, merit-based standard. But solving the chaos of multiple exams created a new vulnerability. By removing the alternate routes, the system gathered up all of that nationwide pressure and concentrated it into a single, highly fragile bottleneck. This funnel illustrates the narrowing path between the country's vast population and the limited supply of medical seats. Over 2 million candidates register for NEET every year. They are all competing for a volume of placements accommodating only a tiny fraction of that group. That intense scarcity spawned a sprawling, multi-million-dollar coaching industry. Entire cities have transformed into hubs dedicated solely to helping students crack this specific test. In an environment this saturated, a difference of just 1 or 2 marks drops a candidate's rank by hundreds or even thousands of spots, completely altering their admission prospects. The pressure never disappeared when the old system was abolished. It simply evolved into a high-stakes, winner-takes-all obsession. When you consolidate all your power into one exam, you also consolidate all your risk. Any crack in the execution compromises the entire structure. As the sheer volume of test takers expanded, the logistics began to strain. Issues emerged ranging from administrative mismanagement at exam centers to serious allegations regarding the security of the test papers themselves. For the families pacing outside these exam centers, these aren't administrative hiccups. These failures directly impact students who have paused their lives for years, waiting for a fair assessment. In a system where the margins of success are incredibly thin, even the rumor of an unfair advantage is disastrous. It destroys the only currency a centralized exam actually relies on: public trust. That erosion of trust is exactly what brought us to the heavy police barricades and the defiant student demonstrations we see today. These protests are the culmination of years of accumulated generational anxiety. In an environment where the margin for error is non-existent, a single procedural failure feels like a personal betrayal to millions of families. Critics also point out that a singular exam fails to account for the stark socioeconomic divides across different states, leaving students from under-resourced backgrounds at a disadvantage. NEET delivered on its original promise. It wiped out the chaotic fragmentation of the past and built the centralized pathway the country asked for. But until that pathway is strong enough to safely support the weight of India's expectations, the test meant to open doors will continue to feel like an insurmountable wall. Preparing for the NEET exam is an isolating experience. For millions of students across India, it means trading years of their youth for late nights, towering stacks of textbooks, and absolute solitary focus. But that effort doesn't happen in a vacuum. Families pour their life savings into coaching centers and rearrange their daily routines around study schedules, turning a single test into a multi-generational investment. They make these sacrifices for a specific goal: earning a rank high enough to secure a seat in a government medical college, and eventually the right to wear a white coat. This massive national testing apparatus only functions because of a fragile social contract. Millions of families willingly offer years of their lives based on the belief that the system will evaluate them with total fairness. On results day, that contract was broken. What is usually a moment of nervous celebration dissolved into nationwide confusion as data anomalies began appearing in the official scoreboards. To understand why this was so jarring, you have to look at the baseline expectations. Students endure intense bureaucratic friction, strict dress codes, multiple ID checks, and heavy surveillance, all meant to guarantee airtight security. Yet, despite those barriers, reports surfaced of mismanaged exam centers and grace marks being awarded through opaque calculations that authorities struggle to explain. This diagram shows a standard distribution of student ranks. The most severe threat to this mathematical curve is a paper leak. If even a tiny cluster of candidates gains early access to the questions and achieves artificially perfect scores, the required admission threshold is forced upward, pulling seats out of reach for honest students. In a zero-sum competition with millions of candidates, a mere fraction of proven unfairness invalidates the legitimacy of every single result. Decades ago, rumors were confined to local whisper networks. Today, those whispers escalate into an explosive national crisis almost instantly via digital networks. Candidates found themselves trapped in a loop, huddled around glowing screens, constantly refreshing their feeds for the latest updates on the unfolding controversy. This digital ecosystem creates an incredibly volatile environment. For panicked teenagers trying to make sense of their futures, separating verified evidence of leaks from algorithmic rumors is practically impossible. This unchecked digital frenzy transformed individual academic anxiety into collective, actionable outrage. That outrage eventually moved into the physical world. Frustrated by the lack of clear answers, students stepped away from their study desks and took their grievances directly to the streets. These placards translate that digital outrage into concrete demands: transparent investigations, clear communication, and absolute accountability from the authorities. These gatherings are desperate mechanisms used by youth to force a massive bureaucracy to acknowledge them. Meanwhile, government authorities found themselves attempting to defend the historical credibility of their national testing apparatus, while simultaneously launching investigations into genuine systemic failures. When the official communication channels of a massive institution fail, the streets become the only remaining venue for the public to negotiate their grievances. Ultimately, the battlefield moved from the volatile streets to the highest judicial authority in the country. The courts face a massive dilemma. On one side, they must weigh claims of systemic rot against the legal requirement for documented physical evidence. On the other side sits the logistical reality of forcing 2 million students to retake the exam. Tipping the scale toward total re-examination fractures the academic timeline, leaving millions facing delayed admissions and agonizing uncertainty. Judicial proceedings are necessarily methodical and evidence-based, but for a student watching their university admission window evaporate, that legal process feels painfully slow. A Supreme Court ruling can legally resolve the dispute, but judicial orders alone cannot restore the public's lost faith in the system. Strip away the legal arguments and the bureaucratic framing, and you are left with the individual student, caught in a state of limbo, waiting for a system to decide their fate. The psychological toll of this uncertainty is immense for young adults who have tethered their entire self-worth to this single compromised test score. The NEET controversy has evolved into a foundational crisis of institutional faith. Administrative errors and security failures have eroded the core certainty that hard work dictates the outcome. Moving forward, authorities must prove to a disillusioned generation that the system remains a meritocracy, where their efforts are accurately measured. If trust is the currency of standardized testing, what structural changes can actually make medical admissions transparent and fair again? That is the question we explore in Part 3.